Check this out, BCM right here, bringing you another Commander deck tech, and today we have a personal favorite of mine with Loot Exuberant Explorer. This is a mono green colorless Eldrazi ramp deck. With Loot Exuberant Explorer, we're going to use his ability of playing additional lands to ramp out as many lands as possible every single turn so we can cast all these very high-powered, high-casting cost creatures. But more importantly, with Loot's activated ability, if we have a lot of lands on the battlefield, we get to activate them for 4 colorless, 2 green. We get to look at the top 6 cards of our library and put any creature card with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands we control on the battlefield, and the rest go on the bottom. So pretty much our main theme is kind of a clash between a mono green Tron build utilizing very powerful planeswalkers and artifact creatures alongside with the mono green Eldrazi ramp build. So I really hope you guys enjoy this build. Let's get right into it. First up are all the Eldrazi creatures. Of course, we have Emrakul the Promised End. This is a 13 cost, 13/13. It has flying, trample, protection from instants, but his mana cost will cost 1 less for each card type in your graveyard. And whenever we cast Emrakul, we get to gain control of target opponent's next turn, and then that player will take an extra turn after that one. So for 1 turn, we get to Mindslaver our opponents. Next, we have Ulamog the Infinite Gyre. These are the original Eldrazi Titans, and each one of these Eldrazi Titans has the static ability, if it's put into a graveyard, you get to shuffle your entire graveyard and itself back in. And we're really going to capitalize on this theme. That way we can continually keep recasting as many big creatures as possible. But when you cast Ulamog the Infinite Gyre, you get to destroy target permanent. All the Eldrazi Titans have Annihilator as well, which is a very powerful attack mechanic. So whenever that creature attacks, the defending player will have to sacrifice the number of permanents equal to the Annihilator. In this case, it's 4. And Ulamog is indestructible, so he's very hard to get rid of. Next, we have Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger. This one is probably my favorite one. When you cast Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger, you get to exile 2 target permanents. He is indestructible as well, and whenever Ulamog attacks, that defending player has to exile the top 20 cards of their library. Now we have the newer one with Ulamog the Defiler. This costs 10 mana, it's a 7/7. When you cast it, target opponent exiles half their library rounded up. So just on the cast alone, you're exiling most of your opponent's deck. It also has Ward, so if your opponents want to target Ulamog the Defiler, they're going to have to sacrifice 2 permanents. When Ulamog the Defiler enters the battlefield, it'll enter with a number of +1 counters on it, equal to the greatest mana value of cards that are in exile. And Ulamog has Annihilator X, where X is the number of +1 counters on it. Next, we have Kozilek Butcher of Truth. This has the same static ability. If it's put into a graveyard, it shuffles everything back in. Has Annihilator 4, but when you cast Kozilek, you get to draw 4 cards. Next, we have Conduit of Ruin. We're going to search our library for any colorless card with converted mana cost 7 or greater, shuffle, and then put that card we search for on top of our library. And the first creature spell we cast each turn costs 2 colorless less to cast. Next, we have Oblivion Sower. This one's kind of fun because when you cast Oblivion Sower, target opponent will exile the top 4 cards of their library, and then you can put any number of land cards that player owns from exile into play under your control. Next, we have World Breaker. Even though it does cost 7 mana and one of it's green, this card is technically devoid, so it is considered a colorless creature. But when you cast this spell, you get to exile target artifact, enchantment, or land. But we can sacrifice lands to return World Breaker from our graveyard back to our hand. It's also a 5/7 with reach, so you're going to block flyers pretty well. Next, we have a very powerful one. We have Sire of Seven Deaths. This is a 7 cost 7/7 Eldrazi with 7 different keywords. It has First Strike, Vigilance, Menace, Trample, Reach, Lifelink, and in Ward 7. So if our opponents want to target this, they're going to have to pay 7 life. Now we have my personal favorite with Void Winter. This one makes the game so one-sided for your opponents that they're probably going to be very mad at you. But this is a 11/9 Eldrazi, and your opponents can't cast spells with even mana costs, or their creatures can't block with even mana costs. Now we have Flayer of Loyalties. This one is very powerful because not only is it a 10/10 with Annihilator 2 and Trample, but when you cast this, you get to gain control of any target creature. You get to untap that creature gains haste, but you're going to turn that creature you steal into another 10/10 with Trample and Annihilator 2. And it has haste. So if you want to steal your opponent's commander, turn him into an Eldrazi, you can do that with Flayer of Loyalty. Okay, let's get into the artifact creatures. First up is my personal favorite with Wormcoil Engine. This thing blocks so well. It's a 6/6 with Death Touch and Lifelink, and if it's put into a graveyard, you'll get 2 3/3 Phyrexian Worm artifact creature tokens. One's going to have Death Touch, the other is going to have Lifelink. Similar to that, we have Triplicate Titan. This is another version of Wormcoil Engine, except it has Flying, Vigilance, and Trample. It's also a 9/9, and a Triplicate Titan would be put into a graveyard. You're going to generate 3 3/3 colorless golems with those abilities as well. Now we have Meteor Golem. This is just a very efficient removal artifact creature. When he enters the battlefield, you get to destroy any non-land permanent your opponent controls. And his bigger brother is Cityscape Leveler. This is an 8/8 with Trample. When you cast Cityscape Leveler or Cityscape Leveler attacks, you get to destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. Its controller creates a tap Power Stone. So you can utilize this by dealing with your opponent's permanents, or you can actually target your own things if you need the mana. More times than not, the Power Stones are going to benefit us more because we're the ones playing all these colorless creatures. Of course, we have Blightsteel Colossus. Don't really need to say too much more about this. This is a 11/11 with Trample and Infect. It's indestructible and would be put into a graveyard from anywhere. You get to shuffle it back in. And chances are, if you get to connect with this, that opponent has lost the game pretty much on the spot. And because we're going to be generating so much mana, we have Walking Ballista. Not only can we proliferate the counters that we put on Walking Ballista, but if we generate enough mana, we can just put as many counters on Walking Ballista as possible. Now we have some non-colorless, non-Eldrazi creatures that are really going to help us out. So, of course, we have Oracle of Moldiah. We can play additional lands on each of our turns. We have to play with the top card revealed, and we can play lands from the top of our library. And even more so, we have Azusa, Lost But Seeking. We can play 2 additional lands. So, if we have Azusa, Oracle of Moldiah, and Loot on the battlefield, we get 4 additional land drops every single turn. Of course, all these lands have to be in your hand, but now we have some creatures that are going to benefit whenever lands enter the battlefield. So we have good old Tireless Tracker. Shout out to Jim Davis for signing this one for me. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, we get to investigate. We're going to do a very good job at ramping, casting very large creatures, but not only that, we're going to do an even better job of drawing cards. Similar to that, we have Tireless Provisioner. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, we get our choice of a food token or a treasure token. The treasure tokens are going to help us ramp, but the food tokens are going to help us protect our life total by gaining 3 life. And of course, just to end the game even faster, we have good old Craterhoof Behemoth. We don't really need to explain this. It enters the battlefield and the game usually ends. Okay, let's get into all these powerful planeswalkers. Most of these are geared around Ugin the Spirit Dragon. So we have Ugin the Spirit Dragon. He's going to enter with 7 loyalty counters on it. You can +2 him to deal 3 damage to any target. -X, remove any number of counters you want. And then you're going to exile each permanent with converted mana cost X or less. That's 1 or more colors. All these Ugins focus on the if it's 1 or more colors. So if our board is primarily colorless, it's not going to affect us whatsoever. For -10, we get to gain 7 life, draw 7 cards, and then put 7 permanents from our hand on the battlefield. Now we have Ugin, Eye of the Storms. This one is absolutely ridiculous. He'll enter with 7 loyalty counters on it, as most Ugins do. But when you cast this, you get to exile 1 target permanent that's 1 or more colors. And then whenever you cast a colorless spell, you get to do the same thing. We can +2 him to gain 3 life and draw a card. Or 0, add 3 colorless mana that we can use in various different ways. Or -11, we get to search our library for any number of colorless non-land cards, exile them, and we can play those cards without paying their mana cost. And because we are predominantly colorless, we have Ugin the Ineffable. Our colorless spells will cost 2 colors less to cast. He'll enter with 4 loyalty counters on him, but we get to +1 him, exile the top card of our library face down. It'll become a 2/2 colorless spirit, and when that token leaves the battlefield, that card is put back into our hand. Or if we really need to, we can -3 and destroy any permanent that's 1 or more colors. Now we have the Tron aspect. So we have Karn Liberated. Despite being kind of overshadowed by more powerful planeswalkers, I still have a very soft spot in my heart for Karn Liberated. He's going to enter with 6 loyalty counters on him. At a +4 him, target player will exile a card from their hand. Or -3, you can exile target permanent entirely. Or -14, you get to restart the game over, and all the non-aura cards that were exiled with Karn Liberated, you start the game over with those on the battlefield under your control. Now we have Karn the Great Creator. Because we are a prominent artifact theme, we're going to shut down our opponents from using their artifacts entirely. But he's going to enter with 5 loyalty counters on him. You're going to +1 him until end of turn. Target non-creature artifact becomes a creature with its power and toughness equal to that card's mana cost. Or -2, if our opponent happened to exile a artifact that we control, we can get it back from exile and put that card back into our hand. And because we're focused on ramping, we have Nissa Who Shakes the World. Anytime we tap a forest for mana, she's going to provide a additional green mana. She's going to enter with 5 loyalty counters on her. We can +1 her. We're going to put 3 +1 counters on target non-creature land we control. It'll become a elemental creature with vigilance and haste. But if we get to her emblem, we get to search our library for any number of forest cards and put them on the battlefield tapped, and then all lands will become indestructible. Okay, let's get into the artifacts. Most of these are mana rocks or just overall value. Of course, we have Chrome Mox. The reason we're running Chrome Mox is because we just need very fast mana, and most of our stuff is colorless, but we're going to exile a non-artifact, non-land card from our hand. It's called Imprinting, and we're going to add 1 mana of any color of the exiled card's color. In this case, it's going to be green. Of course, we have Soul Ring. We have Thought Vessel. Because we're going to be drawing lots of cards, we want to keep all those cards in our hand. We have our Arcane Signet. My personal favorite artifact, we have Elixir of Immortality. We're going to use this to protect our graveyard and gain 5 life if we really need to. Now we have Oblivion Stone. This one's kind of fun because not only is it a mass removal artifact, but we can put fate counters on certain permanents, and then when we activate Oblivion Stone and sacrifice it, we're going to destroy each non-land permanent that did not have a fate counter on it, and then you remove all fate counters. Now, we want to play lands from basically anywhere possible. So we have Crucible of Worlds. That way we can play lands from our graveyard. Now, we need a way to protect ourselves and draw cards, and what better way to do that than the One Ring? If we cast the One Ring, we're going to gain protection from everything until our next turn, and every single upkeep, we lose 1 life for each burning counter on the One Ring, but we're going to activate the One Ring, put a burning counter on it, and then draw cards equal to the number of burning counters on it. Now we have Nevinral's Disc. This will enter tapped, but we're going to pay 1, activate it, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Now we have Chimmel, the Inner Sun. This is going to allow every single spell that we cast to not be countered, and every single end step, we get to discover 5. Discover is kind of like Cascade, but we're going to exile cards from the top of our library until we exile a non-land card with mana cost 5 or less, and we get to cast that without paying its mana cost. Now we have Forsaken Monument. Because we are primarily a colorless deck, colorless creatures we control will get +2/+2, and whenever we tap a permanent that produces colorless mana, it'll produce a additional colorless mana. And then if we cast a colorless spell, we get to gain 2 life. And because we have very large creatures, we have the Great Henge. This does cost 9 mana, but it'll cost X less, where X is the greatest power among creatures we control. We're going to activate it, we're going to add 2 green mana and gain 2 life, and then whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield, we get to put a +1 counter on it and draw a card. So with all these very big artifact creatures and Eldrazi creatures, with the Great Henge, they're going to enter even bigger, and we get to keep drawing cards. And that seems like a lot of fun. Now we have Mycosynth Lattice. We're going to make sure that everything that we have on the battlefield is a artifact and is colorless. A fun interaction between Mycosynth Lattice and your opponents is if you have Karn the Great Creator out and Mycosynth Lattice is out, all permanents are now artifacts, and the static ability of Karn the Great Creator states your opponents can no longer activate abilities of artifacts. You're going to shut down your opponent from basically doing everything. And we have Darksteel Forge. This is going to make sure every single artifact we control are indestructible. Okay, let's get into the enchantments. Most of these enchantments are just going to help us draw cards or put even more land on the battlefield. But first up, we have Concordant Crossroads. This is just a very low costing, efficient enchantment that we're not going to worry too much about our opponents with their creatures getting haste, because with Concordant Crossroads, all creatures will have haste, but we want our very large Eldrazi and artifact creatures to be able to attack the turn we cast them. Now we have Burgeoning. This will allow us to put lands from our hand on the battlefield anytime an opponent plays a land. And to keep on the additional land theme, we have Exploration. We can play an additional land. Similar to that, we have Splunking. Our lands are going to enter the battlefield untapped, and when Splunking enters the battlefield, we get to draw a card and then put a land from our hand on the battlefield. And if that happened to be a cave, we get to gain 4 life. We are running 1 cave in the entire deck, so there is a potential that we get to gain life with Splunking. Now we have some enchantments that are going to draw us as many cards as possible just by being very large creatures. So we have Elemental Bond. Whenever any creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under our control, we get to draw a card. Now we have Garruk's Uprising. When Garruk's Uprising enters the battlefield, if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, we get to draw a card. This is going to ensure that every single creature we control has trample, because we're going to have very large creatures that we're going to want to get through damage as easily as possible and not be chump blocked. But whenever any creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield, we get to draw a card. Now we have Greater Good. We can sacrifice creatures to draw cards equal to the sacrificed creature's power, then we discard 3 cards. Now we have From Beyond. This is technically a colorless spell because it has Devoid as well. But every single upkeep, we're going to create a 1/1 Eldrazi Scion token that we're going to sacrifice to produce a colorless mana. And its activated ability, we get to sacrifice From Beyond and search our library for any Eldrazi card and put that card into our hand. This is kind of like a sitting Eldrazi tutor. Okay, let's get into the instants. Most of these are just going to be ways to deal with our opponent's stuff or protect us. First up, we have Worldly Tutor, so we can search our library for any creature. Now we have Return of the Wild Speaker. We get to draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-humans we control, or if we really need to, we can pump our entire team by 3. Now to protect our board, we have Heroic Intervention. Permanents we control gain hexproof and indestructible until the end of turn. Now if we need to deal with something, we have Beast Within. We're going to destroy target permanent and its controller will create a 3/3 green beast token. We could use this on one of our own permanents if we really need to. Now we get a fun one. We have Archdruid's Charm. All 3 modes on Archdruid's Charm are going to come up quite often, and we're going to use one of these modes depending on which situation we happen to be in. We can exile target artifact or enchantment if we really need to, or we can put a +1 counter on target creature we control, and then that creature will deal damage equal to its power to another creature we don't control. Or we can search our library for a creature or land card, and if it was a land, we get to put that on the battlefield tapped. Okay, let's get into the sorceries. Most of these are just ways to put as many lands on the battlefield as possible, or go and search for very powerful creatures. Of course, we have Sylvan's Crime. That way we can search our library for any land card. We have Kadama's Reach to go and get as many forests out of our deck as possible. Now we have Skyshroud Claim. Same thing. We get to search our library for up to 2 forest cards and put them on the battlefield. We also have Cultivate. Same thing as Kadama's Reach. Now we have Rishkar's Expertise. We get to draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures we control, and we can cast a spell with mana cost 5 or less without paying its mana cost. Now we have a bigger tutor. We have Tooth and Nail. We can choose one, or we can choose both by paying its Entwine cost. So for 9 mana, we can search our library for up to 2 creature cards and put those into our hand, and then we can put 2 creature cards from our hand on the battlefield. Now we have Finale of Devastation. Because we are going to generate as much mana as possible, we're going to want to cast X for the biggest amount possible. We're going to search our library or graveyard for any creature card with mana cost X or less and put it onto the battlefield. But if X was 10 or more, creatures will get +X and gain haste. Now we have a very powerful one. We have Rise of Eldrazi. This spell cannot be countered, and when you cast it, you get the ability of the 3 Eldrazi Titans. So you're going to destroy target permanent, that's Ulamog. Target player is going to draw 4 cards, that's Kozilek. Then you get to take an extra turn after this one. Okay, let's get into the land base. First up are all the colored lands. Of course, we have Cavern of Souls, because we are predominantly a Eldrazi tribal build. We want to produce mana, that way that spell cannot be countered. And it also taps for a colorless. Now we have Fabled Passage, that way we can go get whatever basic land we need. Now we have Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth. This is going to turn every single land into a forest in addition to its other types. So all our lands are going to benefit from Nissa, who shakes the world, because then every single land we have that's a forest will produce 2 green instead of 1. Now we have the good old cycling land with Tranquil Thicket. Now we have Mossword Bridge. This is going to enter tapped, but it's also a hideaway land. So when it enters the battlefield, we get to look at the top 4 cards of our library, put any one of those cards exiled face down, and we can pay 1 green If we control a creature with power 10 or greater, we can cast that exile card without paying its mana cost. Okay, let's get into all the colorless lands. So we have Urza's Saga. This is going to produce a colorless mana. Chapter 2, we get to pay 2 colorless and create a construct token where its power and toughness is equal to the number of artifacts we control. And then Chapter 3, we get to search our library for any artifact with mana cost 1 or 0. We have the 3 Tron lands. So we have Urza's Mine, Urza's Power Plant, and Urza's Tower. If we have all 3 of these Urza lands on the battlefield, they'll check each other, and then Urza's Tower will produce 3 colorless mana, and the other 2, the Power Plant and the Mine, will produce 2 colorless instead of 1. Now we have Urza's Cave. We can pay 3 colorless, sacrifice Urza's Cave, and search our library for any land and put it on the battlefield tapped. Because we're a prominent Eldrazi list, we have Eye of Ugin. Colorless Eldrazi spells will cost 2 colors less to cast, or we can pay 7 and search our library for any colorless creature and put that card into our hand. Now we have Eldrazi Temple. This will produce 1 colorless mana normally, but it'll produce 2 colorless if it's a Eldrazi spell or a ability of a Eldrazi creature. Now we have Sanctum of Ugin. If we cast a colorless spell with mana cost 7 or greater, we can sacrifice Sanctum of Ugin and then search our library for any colorless creature card and put that card into our hand. So if we're already casting 1 Eldrazi spell, we can use that creature with Sanctum of Ugin to go get another one. Now we have Reliquary Tower. Because we're going to be drawing lots of cards, we want to keep those cards in our hand. Now we have Mirrored Landscape. That way we can sacrifice it and search for 2 basic lands and put those on the battlefield tapped. Now we have Promising Vein. We can pay 1 colorless, search our library for a basic land, and put it on the battlefield tapped. Now we have Zhalfirin Void. When it enters the battlefield, we get to scry 1. Now we have Buried Ruin. We can sacrifice Buried Ruin by paying 2 colorless, sacrificing Buried Ruin, and returning that artifact from our graveyard back to our hand. Now we have Rogue's Passage. Because we don't want our opponents interacting with our big creatures whatsoever, we're just going to make them unblockable and deal as much damage as possible. Now we have Tomb of the Spirit Dragon. We're going to pay 2 colorless, and then we gain 1 life for each colorless creature we control. And because we're doing a lot of things that put counters on things, or we have a lot of powerful planeswalkers that we want to emblem as soon as possible, we have Karn's Bastion. We're going to pay 4 colorless, then we get to proliferate. Okay, now we have some lands that are going to deal with our opponent's lands in case they give us some problems. So we have Ghost Quarter. We're going to sacrifice Ghost Quarter, destroy target land, and then its controller can search for a basic and put it into play. What's really fun is, because we are playing Crucible Worlds, we can keep bringing back Ghost Quarter, and eventually our opponents are going to run out of basic lands. Because nowadays, most players don't really run that many basic lands. Now we have Demolition Field. This one is similar to Ghost Quarter, except it can only target a non-basic land a opponent controls. But if you activate this, then sacrifice Demolition Field to destroy that land a opponent controls, both that opponent and you get to search for a basic land and put it on the battlefield. We have 1 waste and 12 forests. And that was the Commander deck tech for Loot, Exuberant Explorer. I really hope you guys enjoyed my version of this Eldrazi-Tron ramp build. I'll leave a link to the Mox field for the deck list in the comments below. But until next time, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share these videos, and I'll see you in the next one.